I didn't catch him because I was suspicious. I caught him because he was careless, arrogant, and convinced he was untouchable. His phone lit up while he was in the shower, and the preview showed a message from a woman I'd never heard of, talking about how she could still feel his hands on her body. My heart dropped, but instead of pretending I hadn't seen it, I opened the phone and let it unlock without hesitation. What I found wasn't a few questionable texts that could be twisted into a misunderstanding. It was a flood, a non-stop stream of conversations stretching back months, maybe longer. There were women from different cities, women who followed the team, women who worked around the league, women who pretended to admire me, women who posed for photos beside me, women who complimented my hair, my dress, my marriage. The messages were filled with late-night arrangements, suggestive jokes, hotel room references, and comments that reduced me to a clueless prop standing beside him on red carpets. He complained that I was too focused on my career, too polished, too admired, and he told these women that they made him feel alive in ways I never could. I felt sick. Not because he cheated, but because he mocked me while doing it. He used me as a punchline, proof of how easily a perfect wife could be fooled. There were women who bragged about sleeping with him while I was hosting events, filming, rehearsing, smiling for cameras. They treated my life like a stage set they could sneak behind, like I wasn't human, like I didn't bleed. I kept scrolling, even though my hands shook. I wanted to see how deep it went, how low he could sink, how long he'd been living a double life while the world praised us as a golden couple. And then I stumbled into the thread that made everything inside me go still. Messages between him and Erin Barry, the wife of Brent Barry, his teammate. Someone who had been in our home. Someone whose children I had hugged. Someone who shared dinners, events, laughter, stories, and whispered conversations with me as if we were friends. The messages made it clear that it wasn't a drunken mistake or a single lapse in judgment. They had been meeting while the team traveled, finding excuses during practice schedules, and coordinating their encounters with a level of comfort that only comes from repetition. They talked about how they had to be more careful, how I was too busy trying to maintain an image to notice, how Brent would never suspect, and how the thrill came from hiding it in plain sight. They used the same rooms, the same corridors, the same cities the team stayed in. The betrayal was woven into the fabric of our lives. My chest tightened, and I felt humiliation crawl under my skin like fire ants. Erin had smiled at me across tables, complimented my lipstick, asked about my work, and pretended to admire my marriage. And all the while, she had been texting my husband behind closed doors, laughing at my trust, treating my dignity like a joke. Brent, quiet, loyal, and respectful, had no idea that the man he played beside was sleeping with his wife. The violation was layered: friendship, teamwork, marriage, loyalty, all shredded without hesitation. When Tony walked out of the shower and saw me holding his phone, the expression on his face told me everything I needed to know. He didn't look guilty or afraid. He looked annoyed, like I had interrupted his evening. I asked him how long it had been going on, and he shrugged with the indifference of someone who believed consequences didn't apply to him. When he finally spoke, he dismissed everything as unimportant, as if I were being dramatic, as if betrayal counted only when there was physical proof, as if emotional intimacy, sexual conversations, secret meetings, and shared hotels didn't qualify as cheating because he hadn't been caught in a bed. In that moment, I felt myself detach. Not because I was weak, but because something inside me snapped with clarity. I realized I had been living beside a man who saw loyalty as a slogan, marriage as a publicity tool, and teammates as collateral damage. The world admired us, but I had been sleeping next to a stranger with no conscience, no integrity, and no respect for anyone who trusted him. I walked away from him and locked myself in the bathroom, not to cry. The tears didn't come yet, but to breathe through the humiliation that pressed against my ribs. I stared at my reflection and didn't ask what was wrong with me. I asked what the hell I was doing staying married to a man who treated me like an accessory he believed would smile, stay quiet, and protect his image. The next days were a blur of acting. I smiled for cameras, posed for photos, and pretended I wasn't replaying every moment of our marriage while wondering how many of those moments were staged. Even inside my own home, I could feel him monitoring me, not out of concern, but out of fear. Not fear of losing me, fear of being exposed. Rumors started circulating almost immediately. Whispers in locker rooms. Reporters asking strange questions. Women avoiding eye contact. The air around us shifted, and it was clear the truth was leaking long before I ever spoke a word. Tony tried to convince me to keep quiet, to handle things privately, to think about the brand, the image, the endorsement contracts, the narrative. He cared more about headlines than the marriage he had gutted from the inside. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't beg him to choose me. I watched him scramble, watched him panic, watched him calculate how to protect himself. And in that performance, I saw exactly what our relationship had become, a shield he hid behind, not a life we shared. The night I told him I wanted a divorce, he didn't ask why. He knew. And that was the confirmation I needed. He didn't fight for me, didn't apologize, didn't confess, he strategized. That was the moment I understood that leaving him wasn't heartbreak. It was liberation. The world would soon learn the truth. The media would tear into it. The league would pretend to be shocked. Fans would choose sides. Cameras would swarm. His teammates would look at him differently. Aaron's marriage would collapse. All of it was coming like a storm building over a dry field. But before any of that happened, before the headlines and the statements and the public speculation, I made one quiet promise to myself. I would never again let a man feast on my loyalty while spitting on my dignity. That was the night my marriage died. And it was the night I started coming back to life. The day the news broke, I woke up to my phone exploding with notifications. I didn't leak anything, I didn't hint, I didn't whisper to anyone. But secrets this filthy never stay buried, especially when they involve a star athlete, a TV actress, and the wife of his teammate. Reporters camped outside the house. Friends pretended to be concerned while digging for details. Publicists panicked. Producers called with that fake gentle tone that means they don't want bad PR anywhere near their projects. The story spread faster than wildfire. Headlines weren't subtle. They didn't say marital issues or private separation. They screamed betrayal. They named Aaron. They named Brent. They hinted at locker room whispers. They replayed photos of all four of us smiling together like some sick joke. And the world treated my humiliation like entertainment. People online dissected my face, my body, my age, my outfits. They wondered if I drove him to cheat, if I was cold, if I was boring, if I was too focused on my career. Women I didn't know suddenly had opinions about my sex life. Men treated my pain like gossip. Talk shows joked about it. Strangers claimed they saw it coming. Tony tried to get ahead of the story. He called me and told me we needed to present a united front. He wanted a statement saying the split was mutual, respectful, private. He wanted me to protect him from the consequences of his own choices. He talked about sponsorships, brand image, fans, legacy. Not once did he mention our marriage, our vows, or the wreckage he left behind. I told him he could issue whatever statement he wanted, but I wasn't going to lie to save him. He panicked. He begged. Not for me, for his reputation. He was terrified of being booed, of being judged, of being seen as the villain. The same man who shrugged when I confronted him suddenly cared desperately about how people saw him. When Brent found out, he called me. His voice broke in a way that mine never did. He sounded destroyed, blindsided, gutted. He told me he trusted Tony like a brother. He told me he never imagined betrayal could come from inside his own home and his own team at the same time. I realized in that moment that the two of us were the only honest people in the entire mess. The league pretended to stay out of it, but everyone talked. Coaches whispered, players stared. Wives avoided me like infidelity was contagious. I could feel people deciding whether I was pitiful or admirable. I refused to be either. I showed up to work. I looked every reporter straight in the eyes. I didn't hide, didn't shake, didn't crack. If they wanted a spectacle, they weren't getting it from me. Tony began losing control of the narrative, and he hated it. He tried to reach out, to smooth things over, to convince me to attend events with him, so the public would think we were fixing things. I told him I wasn't a prop he could use to polish his image. For the first time, he understood I was done protecting him. The moment I filed for divorce, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Oxygen. Real, clean, sharp air in my lungs. My house felt bigger. My steps felt lighter. My reflection looked like someone returning from a war she never agreed to fight. Work became my refuge. I poured myself into producing, directing, learning, reshaping my identity into something that didn't depend on who I was married to. People assumed I was fragile, broken, lonely. They were wrong. I was rebuilding, and I was doing it on my own terms. Then slowly, something unexpected happened. I met someone who looked at me without seeing a scandal, without seeing a headline, without seeing a man's leftover damage. He didn't ask about Tony. He didn't tiptoe. He saw me, not the actress, not the ex-wife, not the betrayed woman, just me. And instead of swallowing me whole, instead of competing with my light, instead of needing to be the center of attention, he stood beside me like it was the most natural thing in the world. With him, I didn't have to defend myself. I didn't have to shrink. I didn't have to pretend everything was fine. I could laugh without checking if someone was watching. I could breathe without feeling judged. I could exist without editing myself. The world eventually lost interest in the scandal. New drama replaced it. New celebrities took the spotlight. People forgot the details. But I didn't forget who I became because of it. I learned that a woman doesn't discover her strength when life is kind. She discovers it when the person she trusted most shows her exactly how deeply he can wound her, and she stands back up anyway. Tony went on to rebuild his reputation. Erin destroyed her own marriage. Brent found peace with time. But me? I came out of it with a life that was finally mine, not built for someone else's pride or spotlight. The betrayal didn't break me. The humiliation didn't define me. The divorce didn't ruin me. It set me free. And freedom looks damn good on me.